That's the boxing this weekend in the East End. But just down the road from both the Troxy and York Hall, there is a football stadium. It's called Upton Park. Last week, it hosted a very lively, very entertaining press conference, and on July 14th, I'm not quite sure how many empty seats there will be, but it looks like there'll be none. It looks like it could be a sellout of 40,000 plus. It will host an international heavyweight fight, and I say international even though both boxers are indeed British. The fight will be between David Haye and Derek Delboy Chisora. If you're talking to Derek Delboy Chisora, he says the fight's between Derek Delboy Chisora and David Haye. If you're talking to David Haye, he says the fight's between David Haye and Derek Delboy Chisora. Anyway, I've got on the line now Derek Delboy Chisora's manager, Frank Warren, with hopefully can give us a bit of an update on how we stand with this situation. Frank, welcome to the show.
Hi, Steve. How you doing?
Yeah, fantastic. Frank, this fight was announced last week, and then it was announced under the auspices of the Luxembourg Boxing Federation, an organisation that's set up, if I'm not mistaken, 7 years before the British Boxing Board of Control set up. Then the British Boxing Board of Control seemed to issue a fairly strong-worded complaint or letter, and then you seem to come back on with a fairly strong letter. Since then, the Luxembourg Boxing Federation's agent in the UK has come back with a strong letter. The tickets, well, they're flying out. Could you just give us an update on where we stand at the moment?
Where we stand is the fight's on the 14th of July. About 26,000 tickets have gone sold, and we've not even announced the undercard yet.
It's a staggering staggering response, a staggering turnout. Has it even surprised you, Frank, just how popular the fight is turning out to be?
Yeah, look, let's get it right. We were trying to make this fight before all this nonsense happened in Germany, because I always thought it was a good fight anyway, and I thought it'd be an O2 type of event.
Sure.
And obviously, some of the scenes after the fight, obviously, have brought even more people's attention. So I'd be a liar to tell you that's not the case. It's a huge event. There is no doubt about that. There are a lot of distractors. I think Jeff Powell has been really cracking on in the mail, coming out with some misinformation about hooligans and whatever, which they took down off of his site yesterday. But more importantly, what they didn't take down from the site, despite all the negativity from the Daily Mail, they conducted a poll amongst their readers as to would they watch the fight, and 71% of them, a massive 71%, said yes, they would.
That's certainly what the public are saying. Now, the board, one of the arguments from the board, one of the suggestions from the Board of Control was a threat, suggesting that people with British Boxing Board of Control licences that were in any way, shape involved with this fight, either by promoting it or actually being present on the night, would be deemed to have surrendered their licence. Now, I think you counter fairly strongly to that. What's the latest on that particular potentially legal situation?
Well, the board have had a number of letters from a number of people involved in the show and people who want to be involved with the show, and they have not responded to those solicitors' letters yet. We're waiting for the response from them. Obviously, I do want to make something clear, Steve. I'm not against the British Boxing Board of Control. We need the British Boxing Board of Control. We need that to work, and that needs to satisfy not just one group of licence holders or any favoured groups. They need to make sure that everybody's happy as you can make people happy.
Sure.
In that sort of process. But I'm against the small amount there's a small amount of stewards. Not all of them. Some of the stewards are really good guys, but there are a few stewards there who think this is their private little fiefdom, and they feel that they can do as they please. And now I'm not listening to the licence holders. A letter was sent yesterday. It's an open letter that was sent in response to the board's open letter, the press release they put out last week regarding the licences, by Bruce Baker, who is the chairman of the Professional Boxing Promoters Association. I think he represents at least 30 promoters.
And they've been around about 12, 15 years as well, haven't they?
Yeah, and they've been unhappy for a long time about various things, which I've got to be honest, I never paid too much attention to, and I'm saying that selfishly, but since all this stuff has been happening, you sort of look at it and you can see where they're coming from. And people are unhappy, and it is not up to 77 people who are not even voted in democratically. 77 people to talk on behalf of 2,000, and the other 2,000 licence holders do not get a say in anything. And I was really, really annoyed to hear yesterday that Charlie Giles, the chairman, the self-elected chairman and president of the Boxing Control, vice president of WBC, vice president of the EBU, had a meeting with a group of promoters in London yesterday, about 5 or 6 promoters, chosen promoters, to sit down and talk about the matter. Now, as I say, they're roughly, I think, about 50. There's lots of like, what's going on?
Who was in the small hand-picked group that he chose? Then I'm assuming it was people that have maybe been critical of the July 14th promotion.
I understand Matchroom Hearns was there. I understand Frank Maloney was invited, but anyway, one of those about 5 or 6. But why wasn't I invited? Why wasn't from Scotland? Why wasn't Alec Morrison? Why wasn't Mike Goodall? Why isn't all these different guys? Why weren't they invited? What's all these private meetings going on? And that's the problem. See, when you talk about you're against the board, people think, oh, you're against, you're anarchist. You're against what's going on you're taking on the system. You're not taking on the system. You could not find a journalist that would probably know more than 2 or 3 of the names of the stewards.
No, listen,
possibility.
Listen, I could maybe do 6 of the 77.
It's a faceless group of people, and as I say, some of them are very, very, very well respected, and I've got a lot of respect for them. And there are others in there, not because they don't agree with me, but there's a few of them in there which I wonder what they're doing there, and they don't represent the sport, in my opinion, as well as and do not have their finger on the pulse of what's happening in sport. Boxing has been really put under the cosh last year. We all knew it was coming. The Sky were going to cut back by 50% of their output, which they're doing because they're obviously spending money on Formula One, and obviously they don't want to lose Premiership with the contracts coming up. So everybody's, boxing's a sport that suffers. They've done a great job for sport, Sky. There's no doubt about that. I mean,
sure.
Box Nation's up and running now, which is great. It helps. It gives an alternative, but where are the board on all? They don't think they know what's going on. They're having private meetings.
So this private meeting yesterday, Frank. This private meeting yesterday. This was, I'm assuming, so that Charlie Giles could report back to Robert Smith, the General Secretary, and say that, contrary to what we're hearing, there is a lot of support for our stance against this show.
Well, I have no idea. I mean, and he shouldn't have to report back to Robert Smith because Robert Smith is the General Secretary. He doesn't have a vote on anything. He is an employee of the board, and he's the employee of the members. I'm a member.
It's a stupid move.
I've probably had a licence. I can only think of 1 or 2 stewards have been there longer than I've had.
Yeah, good point.
And the point I'm making about it is, and of course there are people who give up a lot of valuable time.
Sure.
They don't get paid to do it, but then there are other people who are involved at this level who travel the world first class. They spend their best time at hotels, and they get get paid by the various governing bodies that they go to represent on behalf of the British Boxing Board of Control, and so forth. And it, it's not a bad day at the races. You're in the best seat in the house, and you're travelling the world, and you can sit in the bar afterwards.
As you say, it isn't.
But the point is what is happening here is somebody needs to listen to what's going on here. There's been a lot of problems up in Scotland. A letter was sent to the Sports Minister concerning the attitude of the board, and I understand an apology had to be made to the Sports Minister because of misinformation that the board had given him. There've been a lot of moves behind the scenes with good old Jose Sulaiman,
who runs the WBC.
Honest man in boxing, who says this is a disgraceful fight. How dare they allow this fight to go on? This is the guy that Mike Tyson got released after 3 years in prison, put him in the #1 position, and said, that's all well and good.
Better than that, Frank. With Jose, Jose's finest hour was in Tokyo when Buster Douglas had legitimately knocked out Mike Tyson, and Jose said, "We don't accept that decision." And by the time he came off the plane, he realised he'd made a mistake. Listen, Frank, I've got to leave it there.
All right, mate.
But I'll speak to you very soon, and we'll get.
Don't forget, you want to see this? It's on Box Nation,
and obviously some tickets available. Upton Park, July 14th. Thanks very much indeed, Frank Warren. There, thank you very much indeed, Rombo. It's a massive fight. It's a massive fight, but you can understand that people are sort of a bit divided on it because it looks like there's an assault on the British Boxing Board of Control, but as Frank's saying there's not.
Well, it's North London v South London, so that's big news, at any rate. As you say, I think it's because it's been misreported as if Derek Chisora had been banned, and David Hayes should be banned.
And also that the sense that, and this is what Frank was apoplectic about several times last week, every time I tuned in on 5 or Radio 4, watched him on telly, is that there's a sense that this was an illegal fight, that there was something illegal about this.
Which is, of course, a complete nonsense.
It's a nonsense. OK, Rob.